Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your invitation and thank you for the kind words of introduction. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak to you here today. Very briefly, I am an economist at the University of Cambridge, but today I'm speaking primarily as a Ukrainian and as a consultant to President Zelensky. So I'm especially pleased to be here today because that this conference is taking place today and has remained true to talk about Ukraine and with Ukraine, not just about Ukraine. That makes good sense because, as you know, if you're far removed, it's not always quite clear what is happening on the spot, what the actual conditions there are. And they're not always understood correctly or reported correctly. So that's why it makes good sense and it's just to do so because, as you know, Ukraine is now uh, defending the European freedom, and that's why the future of the EU and the future of Europe as a whole is being decided. And secondly, I'm especially pleased to talk about the discussions and the consequences of the war between Russia and Ukraine, not only a war against Ukraine, but against the rest of the world. That's why I'm very much looking forward to hearing the experts' opinions. From the way we see it, and unfortunately, I must say this, the situation looks very negative, considering the war crimes on behalf of the Russians. We can continue to convince our friends in the civilized world to assist and support Ukraine even more in economic, but also in military terms. It is a fact. With the Russian regime, you cannot conclude permanent peace. And that's what we have just heard in very eloquent terms. Any agreement, such as the Minsk agreement, is going to fail. And this also because it's the uncertainty about the future after an agreement. This is going to continue. And as we all know, from economics, it's uncertainty, and this is an economic truth. Growth creates jobs, and this can also destroy war will destroy jobs, not only for Ukraine in the 8 years prior to the invasion. That's why I will conclude briefly by saying if it's Ukraine which is fighting alone against the allegedly largest ground forces worldwide, then I'd like to ask you, our partners, at least not to lose sight of the situation in Ukraine, how difficult and unpleasant it might be. And I understand that because otherwise we'll be running the risk that, as in the past, we'll just be talking about wishful thinking, and the true nature of the Russian regime would not be interpreted correctly. And that means that you're not only endangering the future of Ukraine, but also future peace and prosperity in Europe. And this is something that should not be risked. Mr. Wittig put it in very interesting terms. Right now, peace is only possible against Russia. I would put it somewhat differently and say today, peace in Europe is not possible without Ukraine, only with Ukraine. That's why I'd like to thank you once again for your attention.